Libby Prison Escape, 1864. Civil War's Great Escape. Don't miss the next case. Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts below. Darkness clung to the corridors of Libby Prison. The cold February night in 1864 felt like a tomb. Every breath labored, every footstep muffled. Then, at 2:43 a.m., a guard raised his lantern and entered the East Wing, only to find cell after cell empty. 109 Union officers, the very men he had been charged to watch, had vanished into the night. The prison, famously known as Rat Hell, had lost its captives. A daring escape so audacious that the Confederate command was stunned. And inside the walls, in the silent tunnels beneath the floorboards, one prisoner froze, heart pounding. Had they been discovered? This was no spontaneous flight. The planning had been months in the making, under the leadership of Colonel Thomas E. Rose and Major Andrew G. Hamilton. Beneath the stove in the prison kitchen, behind walls no guard dared enter often, they had carved out a secret tunnel. They worked in darkness, in rat-infested cellars, using broken spoons, chisels, even wooden spittoons to move earth. After weeks of toil, their route stretched 60 feet and emerged in a vacant lot in a tobacco warehouse yard. That night, when the light was out and watches were lax, the first men slipped into the opening, crawled across the dirt, and walked through the gate, blending into Richmond's shadowed streets. Backstory. Inside Libby, chaos erupted at roll call. Confused officers scratched their heads. The missing men had vanished. "Fell out the window," some joked, masking fear with humor. Backstory. Guards dragged torches, pounded cells, but found nothing. Meanwhile, outside, the escapees scattered across Richmond's alleys, slipping toward lines held by Union forces. By dawn, the full scale of the breakout became clear. Over 100 men had fled. 59 would reach safety. 2 drowned trying to cross a river. 48 would be recaptured. Even Rose himself was among those taken again. Encyclopedia Virginia. But one man, Captain Robert H. Day, had come within a mile of Union lines before Confederate pursuers snared him. Wikipedia. Another, Lieutenant Mark Bassett, after 4 brutal days on the run, was recaptured just 12 miles from freedom. Wikipedia. The Confederates re-imprisoned them, subjecting them to punishment deep in the dungeon. Encyclopedia Virginia. The prison that once seemed impregnable lay exposed, its security shattered, its reputation in tatters. Behind every face was a story. A soldier, a husband, a father, longing for freedom. Some men traded whispers in the night. Others hid in corners, pretending fatigue. Rumors spread. There were spies among them. Betrayals whispered of Confederate informers tipping off authorities to earlier plans. Some doubted the tunnel was real until they watched men disappear. The low hum of tension filled the air. And then, just days after the escape, word came that Colonel Rose had been recaptured and returned. His diagram of Libby, scrawled by memory, fell into enemy hands. In the halls of Confederate command, fear reigned. Could there be more tunnels? More attempts? Orders circulated to dig mines beneath Libby's foundations to preempt further escape. Encyclopedia Virginia. But just when the prison's walls seemed impregnable again, an explosion rocked its foundations. The blast tore through the night like a cannon's roar. Dust and plaster rained from the ceiling, screams echoing through the narrow halls of Libby Prison. Guards rushed in, muskets drawn, shouting orders into the smoke. No one knew what had happened. A gas leak? A sabotage? Or another escape attempt? When the haze cleared, they saw the cause. A collapsed section of floor near the D kitchen tunnel. Beneath it, a gaping hole yawned, leading straight into the darkness below. The Confederates had been digging counter tunnels to check for more escape routes. and one of them had caved in. Colonel Thomas E. Rose, bruised but alive, was among those dragged out to witness the aftermath. He had been recaptured just days earlier, exhausted and gaunt, his freedom stolen back. Now, forced to stand before the Confederate officers, he listened as they accused him of orchestrating yet another breakout. He said nothing. His silence only fueled their rage. Guards were ordered to double patrols, and every prisoner was searched, their cells stripped bare. Meanwhile, in the smoky chaos, whispers spread among the remaining men. Not everyone believed the explosion was accidental. Some claimed Confederate engineers had deliberately detonated the tunnel to make an example. Others believed a hidden collaborator inside the prison had exposed the escape route. The fear of betrayal was worse than the hunger. Prisoners now eyed one another with suspicion, wondering who had traded their freedom for favor. Outside the prison, Richmond was on edge. The Libby escape had embarrassed the Confederacy, and rumors of Union spies operating inside the city grew louder. Civilians whispered that the daring breakout had been aided by sympathizers, ordinary Virginians who wanted the war to end. Confederate patrols raided homes near the James River, arresting anyone suspected of helping the fugitives. At night, inside the dim prison barracks, men lay awake listening to the guards' boots pacing above them. Some prayed, some cursed. Colonel Rose, still defiant, quietly sketched new plans on scraps of paper. Even in chains, he refused to accept captivity. "If I get one more chance," he whispered to a fellow officer, "I'll finish what we started." But fate wasn't done testing him. The next morning, a messenger arrived from Confederate headquarters. Rose and several of his conspirators were to be transferred immediately to a darker, more isolated facility rumored to be impossible to escape from. As they were led in shackles through the ruined courtyard, one prisoner noticed something half-buried in the rubble from the explosion. A piece of wood, splintered and hollow, leading down into the earth. A new tunnel, unfinished. And someone inside the prison had already started digging again. Rain drummed against the cracked windows of the transport wagon as it rolled through the mud outside Richmond. Shackled together, Colonel Thomas E. Rose and 6 of his men sat in silence, their uniforms tattered, their bodies gaunt from starvation. The guards called their destination Castle Thunder, a Confederate military prison feared even by its own soldiers. Rose stared through the bars, his mind still buried in the earth beneath Libby. He knew someone had been digging again. Someone had refused to give up. By the time they reached Castle Thunder, the men were soaked and shaking. The prison was smaller than Libby, but twice as cruel. A fortress of damp stone and iron, the air thick with mildew and despair. Prisoners were beaten for speaking out of turn, rations cut to keep them weak. Yet even here, rumors of the Libby escape still spread like wildfire. Confederate officers questioned Rose endlessly, demanding the names of those who helped from the outside. He gave them nothing. His silence became legend. Meanwhile, back in Richmond, Union spies embedded in the city began collecting word of what had happened at Libby. Newspapers in the North hailed the escape as the Great Tunnel of Freedom, calling it the most daring act of resistance of the war. The story spread faster than any bullet, inspiring other Union soldiers to attempt similar breakouts across the South. Confederate leaders grew paranoid. They began moving prisoners constantly, offrus, each of another tunnel beneath their feet. But within Castle Thunder, Rose's health was failing. Fever and exhaustion took hold. He spent days half-conscious, dreaming of the men who had reached Union lines, of freedom, of the cold Virginia night that had almost saved them all. Then one evening, as thunder rolled over the city, the sound of shouting erupted in the corridors. Guards were rushing to the gates. Richmond was under siege. Union troops were advancing on the capital. As the guards scrambled, a door creaked open. A Confederate sergeant, a man whose brother had died in a northern prison, quietly slipped Rose's shackles off and whispered, "The war's ending. Get out while you can." Rose stumbled into the rain, disappearing into the chaos as fires burned across the skyline. Weeks later, when Union forces finally entered Richmond, they found Libby Prison empty, its doors broken, its cells abandoned. Scrawled on one of the walls in charcoal were 6 words that would echo through history. "We dug once, we'll never stop." The Libby Prison escape remained one of the most daring and successful prison breaks in American history, a story of courage, desperation, and the unbreakable human will to be free. If this story shook you, the next will haunt you. Subscribe. The darkest crimes are just emerging.